Guys, welcome in. We have the much awaited Anvil Paladin Q&A. And I know, like you guys, I've been waiting for this one too. So let's get right into it. Anvil Aerospace is on the front line of humanity's defense, forging the weapons that keep Earth systems safe from the dangers of outside and within. Continuing tradition, the Paladin spares no one, cutting down threats in a relentless hail of laser fire. Following the concepts for the release of the Anvil Paladin, we took your community voted questions to our designers to provide you with more information on this recently unveiled heavyweight gunship. Now, I do have something here too. So you got 570 replies to this thread right here. And this is the most upvoted question. Will you nerf the Paladin if it achieves the highest kill count like the Corsair? Let me just see. Do a little control F and see if we find a Corsair. No. So just based on that little bit of information right there, I don't think we're going to be getting any questions from this thread right here. So these questions probably came from people in-house, but let's get into it. What is the loaner for the Paladin while it's being developed? The Redeemer. Okay, we all knew that. Regarding VTOL, the Paladin seems to have a rotating thrusters at the back of the ship. How does it handle an atmosphere compared to the Valkyrie's quad VTOL coverage? The Paladin has enough VTOL power to handle adequately an atmosphere and maintain a position above targets, though compared to ships such as the Valkyrie, it'll be less agile. All right, so they're talking about these engines back here, these rotating guys back here in the back. That's what they're talking about. Is there an engineering room? The room at the rear of the upper deck is the engineering room, where the main engineering screen and majority of the components are located. However, some of the components, such as the radar and life support and gravity generator, are located in other areas of the ship. So probably for that, we got to probably go back to the sale page. It says back here, the room at the upper deck is the engineering room, where the main engineering, the upper deck at the back. So up here somewhere, maybe where the 02 is. This looks like the engineering room right here. There's a screen right there, so that could potentially be the engineering terminal. Let's continue. Does the Paladin offer escape pods for its crew? I don't think so. I'm gonna say no on that one. Yes, the crew beds double as ejection pod beds. Short answer is no. Okay, the beds don't eject from the ship. From any ship for that matter, and I don't know when this feature will come into the game, if ever. So they say yes, but they really mean no. I mean, just take my word for it. I think the Spirit series are supposed to have like the ejection pod beds too, but they also don't work. So based off what we already know about other ships, like, don't expect to be able to use this feature anytime soon. How does the Anvil Paladin compare to the Aegis Redeemer? Good question. While both ships are gunships, they both have different takes on the role and playstyle. The recent changes to Redeemer's turrets, weapons, and shield sights are offset by significant boosts to maneuverability. This allows the Paladin to occupy the tankier gunship role. See, this is what I don't like about CIG. They're using guns to balance ships, which makes no sense. It's literally retarded. Like, these ships, they have mass, they have weight, you know, and for me, I truly believe that the best way to balance these ships would be based on their mass and the amount of thrust they can actually produce. That way we have a thrust to weight ratio. That is how you balance the ships. because balancing them off of guns, it just seems arbitrary to me. And the reason why I know this is because the F8 has has a slower turn rate than the Cutlass Black, even though the Cutlass Black is a physically larger ship. And it doesn't make any sense for that ship to be faster in atmosphere and in space than the most, advanced fighter in the game's lore. So that's why these things to me they don't compute, and they just don't make sense. Like I don't really understand why CIG does this. I think they just have people there that are a little bit incompetent when it comes to these things. I don't know if for them making the calculations between the available thrust versus the mass is something that's difficult for them to do. I don't think that it should be that difficult for them to do, but balancing ships on their thrust and their mass would be the better way to balance ships, and not based on their weapons and their DPS. When will the Anvil Paladin start production? The Anvil Paladin is currently in white box production phase. Okay, I don't know what that really means in terms of when it will come out, but it's in white box. I'll let you snort the copium on that one right there. The Redeemer is supposed to have sophisticated shields, but they are size 2. Why does the Paladin have size 3 when its focus is on armor? A ship's shield size does not confer any sophistication bonus, but instead alters factors such as shield health capacity, resistance to damage types. Generally, the larger size, the larger pool. However, having multiple small shields can be a bonus in terms of redundancy and regeneration rates over larger items. In this case, size 2 shields versus a single size 3 shield generator. This is not exactly true though, because depending on what is shooting those size 2 shields will greatly affect how much it can regenerate. So for instance, let's just assume for a second that a fully crewed Redeemer in the new loadout is going up against something like a Constellation Andromeda. Even though this ship is more maneuverable than this ship, because this ship has 4 size 5 weapons, it's going to be able to keep enough damage pressure on this ship to where the shields are not going to be able to fully always regen if this Connie is continuously hitting its shots. That doesn't really matter all that much. What matters is not the regen rates, but the actual resistance to the weapons. But if this thing can't resist size 5 weapons, like what is it really for? Is it supposed to go up against fighters? Because I still think like an F7A or like an F8 could probably still do a lot of damage and keep the shields on this thing down, even though they have fast regen rates. That doesn't really matter if they can be taken down easy, because the more pressure that you can keep on a ship to keep the shields down, you're losing that fight. If you're on the receiving end of that, if you're on the opposite end of it, obviously you're winning, right? But I'm not liking these answers. I'm just gonna keep it a full being with you. Is there any storage in the Paladin, such as gun racks, lockers, or a cargo grid? There are gun racks and personal storage for the crew, but there is not a dedicated cargo area with a cargo grid. We pretty much can see that in its design. Like I said, could there potentially be other variants of the Paladin that come in the future that maybe don't have a turret, but they have, this area filled in for cargo? Who knows? It's CIG, so I would expect them at some point to maybe make another variant of this ship, because they love their variants. It could have been modular. They could have had a module that you can take on and take off, but they got to make their money selling ships. So compared to similar ships such as the Valkyrie and Legionnaire, how well armored is the Paladin? The Valkyrie is the better comparison size wise. Regardless, the Paladin is well armored and able to take a significant amount of incoming fire. How fast does the size 5 quad turret slide between the top and bottom positions? We'll be evaluating this during production, but it won't move quicker than the Scorpius' rail turret. You can expect to take longer than that due to the distance it's required to travel. Kind of makes sense. Is the Paladin still efficient if I played with just one friend as a duo, with them using the remote quad turrets. While weapon stations are usable with only 2 crew, it is not the optimal loadout due to restrictions to the pilot controlled wing weapons. See below for more details. Do the pilot's wings weapons play as gimbaled when they're not remotely manned by dedicated gunners? Yes, if there's nobody in the seats to controlling the wing weapons, the pilot has control of them, albeit locked into a forward arc. Due to their location and their convergence is limited frontally, so they are only suitable for targets to mid to long distances. However, with the independently controlled, they will have full freedom of motion and can look pretty much at a full 180 degrees in all directions, allowing players to engage targets below, above, and behind. That's not really that big a deal, because with a ship like this, it's going to be a mid to long. Like I figured it was going to be mid-range to long-range engagements anyway, just due to the nature of how a lot of these weapon systems actually work, with size 4 weapons having, you know, a 2 kilometer range damn near, or 2+ kilometer range. Like, you can expect to be fighting at, you know, 1500 to 2 kilometers, you know, 1500 meters to 2 kilometers. My bad on that. Hey guys, it's post-production Marcus here, and I had another thought as I was watching this video back and editing it. One of the other things that you can think about this ship too, with its quad size 4s facing forward, is the way that the game works now is it's a DPS race, right? So you want all of your available firepower on one target. So even if you have 180 degree arcs that can look forward, back, up, and down, that doesn't really matter. You don't want to be engaging separate targets with a ship like this. With a ship like this, you're going to have all of your DPS on one single target. So the fact that the weapon convergence distances are not going to be good for the Paladin, I don't think that matters nearly as much, because of how you want to use the ship. You want to use it in a way that's like, okay, the more DPS on the target, the better. How is the visibility with the blast shield activated, and why should we activate the blast shield in the cockpit? Visibility is slightly reduced for all seats. However, the pilot is the only one impacted. All other stations will use remote weapon views. The upper and lower blast shields are independently controlled, allowing the crew to decide whether to fully or partially lock down. In the short term, these parts will provide a small HP boost when deployed, but as physical damage comes online, they will provide additional damage resistance. See, I'm not the biggest fan of having those shields up, because you lose a lot of situational awareness. You're basically flying blind. Now, if you're targeting things, you can see targets through with your HUD and stuff like that, but you're losing visibility of the environment, which I don't like. I wish it was kind of had similar technology to what the Missile Fury has, where it has the same kind of blast shield, but you can see through it. If it had something like that, then I could see like an actual use case for it. But right now, there's absolutely no use case for something like that. And yeah, I'm not a fan of it. People like it. It does look cool. It does add that rule of cool to the ship. But for me, it ain't nothing special. Like, and in the fight, it's not really gonna help you in the ways that you think it would. So, can we replace weapons on the Paladin? Yes. Okay, I'm not even gonna read the response to that. Yes. The internal decks show rooms that look rather empty. Can you explain the purpose of rooms 6, 5, 8, and 9? Details of the rooms can be found on the full Anvil Paladin ship page. Regarding the internal floor plan, 6 and 9 cover the essential traversable areas and take up space due to the number of entranceways from all the connecting rooms, as well as ensuring sufficient space to remove components. Number 5 and the room opposite. On the opposite side are the crew quarters. each with a set of bunks, beds, and a desk area and personal storage. 8 is the main entrance to the ship and contains 4 suit lockers and a set of weapon racks for each crew member. So we're talking about 6, 5, 8, and 9. I mean, if this is explained on the page, I don't know why that's a question. This one's kind of weird. With the ammo system in the future, players are wondering about ballistic reloading. We do still plan for ships to be able to rearm ballistic weapons either directly on the gun in question or from the ship's internal stores fed by players directly. Okay, so don't hold your breath on that one. That's what it sounds like. Can the ship fly across system for long-range operations? Its quantum tank will have a similar size capacity to the Valkyries. However, given the equipped quantum drive and the different system size, there isn't a simple yes or no to this answer. Okay. I would expect it to be very, very similar in terms of like its range and its fuel capacity to that of the Valkyrie, though it's a little bit bigger. So it might have a slightly larger fuel tank, depending on where the tanks are. You know, I think they could have really big tanks if we put the tanks out here on these outboard sides of the ship, but who knows where they're going to be exactly stored at. How many exits does the Paladin offer? There is a single side entrance exit ramp. Okay, so we see that right here. You come in this way right here, and then on the page, on this right here, you see that is the entrance. You got your suit lockers, and you come up, and you have looks at the. So it looks like on this bottom level is where you fly the ship at. Just like the cockpit down here, and then the upper deck is, I guess, is in a lower and an upper. So are these the remote turrets down here then? Yeah, pilot, co-pilot, and the gunners. Okay, so the gunners are down here on the bottom, and the co-pilot and the pilot are on top. I don't like that, because like if we weren't using things like Discord or other like services like Guilded to talk to each other in game, if we only had the ability to speak to each other in game, the prox comms, like us being on different decks from each other, would not be good for situational awareness. So from that kind of perspective, it would almost be better to have only 2 people, especially if the co-pilot can control that size 5 weapon. Now that would have been actually a good question to ask. Does the co-pilot control the size 4 weapon, and are the 2 other gunners down here by themselves? Because if that's the case, and if I can control these, you know, let me go back to here. If the co-pilot is the one that controls this, and then I can control these by myself, then I think that it's just better to run it with a co-pilot, because in theory, right, based on how the game functions, having your gunners down here, you're not going to be able to talk to them unless you have your MFD screen open and you're having that comms channel open, which doesn't really make sense. You know, and that's just a limitation of how the game is actually, you know, currently designed. So that's been the Anvil Paladin Q&A, guys. Let me know what you think. Did this Q&A make you want to get the Paladin more or less? Now, it is currently in white box, so, I mean, still don't hold your breath on that. It's still probably a year or a year and a half from being complete. And yeah, and let's see how it does when it comes out. I think there's another ship that it could potentially team up well with. I think, you know, it teams up well with a Connie, and it teams up well with a Redeemer. There's a lot of good team ups for this one, but again, we need some changes to how multi-crew ships actually function to make them good in a team setting. Because like I said, any of these 3 ships, a fighter can easily destroy any of these 3 ships if it's a competent pilot. An incompetent pilot, maybe not so much, but if they're good and they know what they're doing, they know how to close distance, they know how to stick close in this new flight model, It is a little bit different from the legacy flight model in terms of like how you actually in close distance. But if you can do that, then essentially these ships are toast. You know what I mean? But that's been the Q&A, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.